What if the biggest mystery in Lanterns was never the murder itself? What if the dead man was only the first piece of a much larger game, and the closer John Stewart and Hal Jordan get to the truth, the more they realize that someone has been controlling events from the shadows for a very long time. Episode 2 already changed everything when Hal traveled beyond Earth and came face to face with one of the most important figures in Green Lantern history. But Episode 3 looks ready to push the story even further, because now John's past, Hal's secrets, the strange Manhunter mystery, and the hidden history of the Green Lantern Corps may finally start connecting. And if this next chapter really goes where the story appears to be heading, John Stewart may discover that becoming a Lantern was not simply the beginning of his journey. It may have been the moment he was pulled into a conflict that started long before he ever received a ring. So let's break down what Episode 3 could mean, why John's past may be the key to understanding his future, what Hal is hiding from his new partner, why Sinestro's arrival changes the entire investigation, and the biggest question of all, who is actually controlling the game? Lanterns has already made one thing very clear. This is not simply a traditional superhero story where a hero receives a ring, learns how to use his powers, and immediately starts fighting villains. The series is treating the Green Lantern mythology like a dark detective mystery, with John Stewart and Hal Jordan functioning almost like two investigators who just happen to have access to technology and powers that can cross the universe. The official series premise follows rookie John and veteran Lantern Hal as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. But the first 2 episodes have already shown that this murder is connected to something much bigger. Episode 2 pushed that mystery into dangerous territory by revealing that the threat may involve a hidden Manhunter, while Hal's journey to an intergalactic prison introduced Tail Sinestro into the story. That means Episode 3 has an enormous amount of information to deal with, and the most interesting part is that the show does not appear interested in giving us easy answers. Instead, every answer seems to create another question. The first major thing to understand about Episode 3 is John Stewart himself. Until now, John has been presented as the new recruit, the younger Lantern who is still learning how this strange world works while being forced to follow Hal's lead. But John is not simply a blank character waiting for Hal to teach him how to become a hero. His past matters, his experiences matter, his relationship with his family matters. And the more the series explores his history, the more likely it becomes that John's personal story will connect directly to the larger mystery. Reports about the Episode 3 trailer indicate that the episode will spend more time exploring John's past through flashbacks, potentially giving us a much deeper understanding of the person behind the uniform. That could be one of the most important developments of the entire season, because Lanterns has been building John as someone who is constantly trying to understand what his new responsibility actually means. John is entering a world where everyone seems to know more than he does. Hal knows the Corps, Hal knows the rules, Hal knows Sinestro, Hal understands the dangers that come from the cosmic side of this investigation. John, meanwhile, is being asked to trust a man who clearly has his own history and his own reasons for keeping certain things hidden. That creates a very interesting relationship between the two characters. Hal is supposed to be John's mentor, but the deeper we go into the story, the more it feels like John may eventually become the person who challenges Hal's entire understanding of what happened. And that could be exactly what Episode 3 starts building. John's flashbacks could also explain why the series has spent time establishing his family background instead of immediately turning him into a cosmic superhero. The show has already connected John to his father and his childhood, and Episode 3's reported cast information includes appearances from John Sr. and a younger version of John. That strongly suggests the episode may be interested in showing us the experiences that shaped John before the ring ever entered his life. And this is important because the central theme of Lanterns appears to be more than good versus evil. It is about legacy, responsibility, failure, and the question of whether a person can escape the mistakes of the people who came before them. That theme becomes even more interesting when we compare John's story with Hal's. John is at the beginning of his Lantern journey, while Hal is already a legend. But legends have a past, and Hal's past is clearly coming back to haunt him. The introduction of Sinestro in Episode 2 is not just a cool reference for comic book fans. It is a direct challenge to Hal's history. Sinestro was once a Green Lantern and was ultimately imprisoned after his authoritarian actions, with Hal playing a role in exposing him. So when Hal chooses to visit Sinestro, he is not simply looking for information. He is confronting someone who knows the old version of him. Someone who understands his weaknesses. Someone who may know things about the Green Lantern Corps that Hal does not want John to hear. And that is where Episode 3 becomes extremely interesting. Why would Hal go to Sinestro now? Why does he need information from someone he clearly does not trust? More importantly, what does Sinestro know about the current threat? The series has already connected the Earth mystery to the Manhunters, and the Manhunters are not random monsters. They are tied to the history of the Guardians and the Green Lantern Corps. According to the show's creators, the Manhunter idea was part of the series' concept from very early in development, meaning this is not some last-minute twist added simply for shock value. If that is true, then the murder investigation may be only the surface layer of a much older conspiracy. The Manhunters themselves are one of the biggest clues. In Green Lantern mythology, they were created by the Guardians as robotic enforcers before the Green Lantern Corps existed in its familiar form. Their history eventually became connected to catastrophic failure and rebellion. Bringing them into a grounded detective story creates a strange but powerful combination. On one side, John and Hal are dealing with ordinary people, a small Nebraska community, local politics, suspicion, and a murder. On the other side, they are slowly discovering that something connected to ancient cosmic history may be hiding among those ordinary people. That contrast is exactly what makes Lanterns different from a standard superhero show. The question now is whether Episode 3 will finally identify the Manhunter or simply give us another layer of mystery. The first 2 episodes have already established that Hal and John have limited time to uncover the threat before the situation becomes much worse. That pressure could change their investigation completely. They cannot afford to question everyone forever. They have to decide who they trust, and that is dangerous because the enemy may be close enough to hear everything they are doing. There is also the possibility that the person they are searching for does not even realize how important they are. If the Manhunter has been hiding among humans, the series could be playing with the idea of identity. Who are you when nobody knows what you really are? And how much of your original identity survives after years of pretending to be someone else? That question could apply not only to the hidden Manhunter, but also to Hal and even John. Hal is hiding parts of his past. John is still discovering who he is. Sinestro represents a lantern whose identity became completely transformed by his beliefs, and the mysterious guardian figure entering the story could represent yet another side of that conflict. Reports about Episode 3 indicate that John meets Laura Linney's mysterious guardian character, which could be the moment when the series finally starts explaining more about the cosmic side of the mythology. This is potentially huge. So far, Lanterns has been careful not to overwhelm viewers with cosmic mythology. The show has kept its feet on Earth while slowly revealing that something much bigger exists beyond the planet. But introducing a Guardian directly into John's story could change the balance. The Guardians are supposed to represent authority within the Green Lantern mythology. They created the Corps, established rules, and have enormous knowledge about the universe. But if Lanterns is following the same morally complicated approach it has used with Hal and Sinestro, we should not automatically assume that the Guardians are completely trustworthy. The show has already shown us that powerful institutions can make terrible decisions. The Manhunters themselves are proof of that. If the Guardians created them, and those creations eventually became a threat, then the current crisis could be another example of the past coming back to punish the people who believed they had everything under control. This is where John could become especially important. A new Lantern may see things that experienced Lanterns have learned to ignore. Hal has spent years inside this system. He understands its rules and its politics. John has not. That makes him dangerous in a completely different way. He may ask the questions that Hal stopped asking a long time ago. He may look at the Corps from the outside instead of accepting everything he is told. And if the Guardians have been hiding something, John could be the person who discovers it. The reported flashbacks also give us another reason to pay attention to John's father. John Sr. has appeared in the series' cast information, and Episode 3 is expected to explore more of John's history. We should not assume that this automatically means his father is directly connected to the cosmic mystery, but the writers clearly consider John's family history important enough to revisit. That means the emotional side of the story may be just as important as the mystery itself. John has spent his life carrying experiences that shaped how he sees authority, duty, and responsibility. Becoming a Green Lantern does not erase those experiences. Instead, it forces him to confront them. The ring may give him extraordinary power, but the real question is whether John knows how to use that power without losing himself. That could be one of the reasons Hal was chosen as his mentor. Hal has already made mistakes. He has already seen what happens when a lantern becomes too confident. He understands the cost of failure. But the irony is that Hal may not be the perfect teacher because his own past is exactly what he is trying to escape. And then there is Sinestro. Sinestro's appearance could become one of the most important pieces of the entire season. Episode 2 ended by introducing him as someone from Hal's past, and the creators have described his function in the series as something similar to a psychological foil for Hal. That description is important because it tells us that Sinestro may not need to be physically fighting Hal to be dangerous. His greatest weapon could be information. He knows Hal, he understands what Hal fears, and he may know exactly what Hal is trying to hide from John. Imagine what happens if Sinestro tells John something about Hal that Hal never wanted him to know. Suddenly, the mentor-student relationship changes. John would have to decide whether to believe his mentor or a prisoner who has every reason to manipulate him. That is the kind of conflict that fits the show's detective structure perfectly because the central question becomes not simply who is the killer, it becomes who is telling the truth. That could also explain why the series is introducing Sinestro so early. The show does not need to turn him into a traditional villain immediately. Instead, he can function as a source of uncomfortable truths. He might say something that sounds like manipulation but turns out to be correct. He might reveal information that Hal deliberately withheld. Or he could give John a clue that helps solve the Earth mystery while secretly moving his own plan forward. Sinestro does not need to lie about everything to be dangerous. In fact, the most dangerous version of Sinestro may be the one who tells the truth at exactly the right moment. Another major question is what Hal knows about the Manhunters. Episode 2 strongly connected the investigation to this hidden threat, while Hal's trip to the prison introduced Sinestro. These two events may look separate, but there is a strong possibility that they are connected. Hal may have realized that the Manhunter mystery cannot be solved without understanding what happened inside the core, and Sinestro may possess information that the Guardians have deliberately kept hidden. That would make the Earth murder a gateway into the history of the Green Lantern universe. The victim may have been targeted because of what they knew, or perhaps the murder was designed to attract the attention of the Lanterns. That possibility changes everything. What if the killer wanted Hal and John to investigate? What if the evidence was deliberately left behind? What if the mysterious events in Rushville are not mistakes but signals? This is where the title and overall structure of the series become important. Lanterns is presenting itself as a mystery first and a superhero story second. The official description emphasizes the murder investigation and the relationship between the rookie John and veteran Hal. That means clues will probably matter more than explosions. Small details could have much bigger meaning later. A conversation that seems normal in episode 3 could become extremely important several episodes later. A character who looks like a background figure could be hiding the biggest secret in the story. And that brings us to William Macon and the local community. The show has surrounded the murder investigation with people who have their own motives, beliefs, and secrets. Garrett Dillahunt plays William Macon, while Poorna Jagannathan plays Zoe and Jason Ritter plays Billy. Their presence gives the Earth side of the mystery a human face. Even if the cosmic threat is real, the characters on Earth are not simply pieces on a board. They have relationships and personal reasons for making decisions. That means John and Hal cannot just assume that every strange person is an alien or every suspicious person is guilty. The danger is that the cosmic mystery could make them ignore the human one. Hal especially may be vulnerable to this. He has spent years dealing with threats across the universe, so he might naturally look for an alien explanation. John, however, may be more willing to focus on the people around him. This difference could create another argument between them, and that argument may actually help them solve the case. Sometimes, the best investigative partners are not the ones who agree. They are the ones who see different parts of the same truth. The trailer reports also suggest that Episode 3 could show more of Hal's history, including archival-style material featuring him in an older Green Lantern context. If that material is part of the episode, it could be more than simple nostalgia. The series has already established that Hal is a legend, but showing his earlier image could create a contrast between the hero he once was and the man he has become. That would fit the show's focus on legacy perfectly. Because what happens when a legend starts losing faith in the system that made him a legend? That is why Episode 3 could become the turning point of Lanterns Season 1. The first 2 episodes introduce the mystery. Episode 3 can start revealing what the mystery is really connected to. John's past can give us the emotional foundation. Hal's history can expose the hidden cracks. Sinestro can challenge everything they believe. The Guardians can open the door to the cosmic conspiracy. And the Manhunter threat can finally prove that the murder in Rushville was never an isolated event.